In between the 9th and the 10th plague, Pharaoh tells Moshe, to leave the palace. And he warns him. He says, beware, don't ever see my face again. Because the day that you do see my face will be the day that you die. Moshe says, as you wish, I won't see your face again. And then he leaves the palace in a burning anger. Rashi, the greatest of the commentators, explains that the reason that Moshe was so angry was that Pharaoh had told him, don't see my face again. But isn't that strange? Why would Moshe be upset not to see Pharaoh again? Pharaoh was one of the greatest enemies ever of the Jews. Now, we can't suggest that Moshe felt some personal slight or offense, because the Torah later tells us that Moshe was the most humble man who ever lived. So what's going on? The most obvious explanation would be that Moshe was angry over the affront to God's honor. How dare Pharaoh tell God's appointed messenger, don't see my face again? So that's what threw Moshe into a rage. But perhaps we can suggest another answer that will also help us understand a lingering question from last week's Torah portion. If you look at the 10 plagues carefully, you'll see that there are really 9 plagues with a huge one at the end. The 9 are divided into 3 sets of 3. Before the first of each set, Moshe is told by God to issue a warning to Pharaoh and an explanation. Before the second of each set, he's told to give a warning only. And before the third of each set, no warning and no explanation. The explanations before the first of each 3 sets is very specific. Before the first plague, Moshe is told to tell Pharaoh that he'll know that I am God. Before the 4th plague, the beginning of the second set, Moshe is told to tell Pharaoh that you'll know that I'm God in the midst of the earth. And the third explanation before the 7th plague is so that you'll know that there's no one like me. But if you look carefully, you'll see that after the 2nd and the 7th plague, Moshe adds his own explanations. It looks like he's freelancing. But if you're working for God and he tells you exactly what to say and when to say it, you can't freelance. You can't moonlight. You're not Frank Drebin pretending to be Enrico Palazzo.
Please welcome internationally renowned opera star Enrico Palazzo.
Frank?
So what in the world is Moshe doing, adding his own explanations, freelancing? Well, I explained last week that Moshe could not strike the water or the ground to start the first 3 plagues because he owed both of them a debt of gratitude because they had helped him when he was younger. But if that's true, wouldn't Moshe also have owed a debt of gratitude to Pharaoh, the man who raised him in the palace? And if so, maybe that's what's going on. Maybe Moshe was trying to repay that debt of gratitude by giving his own explanations. His first explanation after the 2nd plague is, there's no one like God. Very similar to God's 3rd explanation, almost anticipating it, bringing it on earlier. And his second explanation that he adds after the 7th plague is, the earth belongs to God. Arguably stronger language than any of the language God used in any of his 3 explanations. So Moshe, perhaps, is trying to slap some sense into Pharaoh's head, making an effort to save Pharaoh because he feels that debt of gratitude. Moshe knows where this is heading, towards the slaying of the firstborn. Maybe he's trying to tell Pharaoh, listen to me, let the Jews out so you don't have to suffer more. And maybe that's what's going on when he leaves the palace. Perhaps he's faking anger to show Pharaoh how serious he is, to show Pharaoh he's got one last shot to listen. And the Talmud tells us something astounding. It says that right before he left, after Pharaoh had threatened him, Moshe slapped Pharaoh in the face. 1 second. He couldn't hit the water, and he couldn't hit the ground, and yet he can slap the man who raised him in the face. Maybe he felt that he had to do it, notwithstanding his debt of gratitude, to try to literally slap some sense into Pharaoh's head, to try to tell him it's not too late. You can still save yourself and your firstborn and all the firstborns in Egypt. And if that's correct, then Moshe felt and was trying to honor a debt of gratitude to Pharaoh, one of our greatest enemies in history, then how much more so do we have to honor debts of gratitude to those people who are kind and nice and pleasant to us.